So today is a very special day named Manga Puja, and then of course all the ceremony, the offering of the new sala and the casting of the Prabhupada, the Buddha Rupa. This is a lot for one day, full moon in February, 1,250 arahants assembled spontaneously to pay respects to the Buddha. And then we had this wonderful dramatic Patimokkha with the wind blowing and so I'll be leaving this evening, and I think it's past few days here at Nalachat, this sense of the kind of period from when I first came here in 1975 and up to this present time is amazing to see what's happened, and we recognize that it's a rather unique monastery because it's the only one I know of where the majority are international Sangha, mostly Western or monks from Europe, Asia, from Australia and the Americas, and then many from Asian countries, mixed with the Thai. So this is, to me it's quite significant, and Nanachat means international. And at this time, this may be a hopeful sign in the world of, an auspicious sign, because on an international level, there's always conflict and prejudices and political problems and economic problems and racial views and opinions that class identities and whatnot that kind of human beings tend to, out of ignorance, out of not understanding Dhamma, they make endless complicated conditions around just where you were born or what you look like or the color of your skin or whatever. So this is a sign, of where all these issues of race and class and nationality are no longer of any significance to our life, and we're committed to the same precept level, the Bhikkhu Vinaya, and then the practice. We're all committed to the same goal, liberation from ignorance. And so this is a universal goal. It's it's not about it's not personal. It's not racial or national or anything. It's when you think of liberation, that's what everybody longs for. No matter where they are, who they are. Liberation from suffering or ignorance or whatever words you want to use. But if you really contemplate the dukkha of this realm, it is a realm of suffering. And I, for many years being from my background, I didn't particularly like to think of it like that. One thinks it's a bit of a depressing way of looking at life. It's all suffering and that. But when you, examine it, investigate it in terms of the way the Buddha encouraged us, we see it for what it is. It's not a realm to attach to. There's nothing in this realm, in the human form or in the conditioned realm that we're experiencing at this time that can give us any permanent security, safety, liberation of any sort. Maybe momentary pleasure is about the best we can expect. So when this really sinks in, then we don't demand that. We're not looking for the impossible conditions because we know that they're impossible, and so we learn to live our lives in this reflective style. And then the Buddhist monastic form is a form that is, based on alms mendicancy, on contentment. And this word contentment is very important to me because I see so many problems in the Sangha, in the West, in England, for example, or other places, is that very few monks or nuns ever really find contentment. There's always a striving for something, wanting a better or something better than what they have, something more. And you can always imagine something better than what you have. Even if you have the best, you can always imagine it being better than the best, which I don't think is possible. Best is, you can't get beyond that. But the mind, the thinking mind will create even the ridiculous absurdities of better than the best. And so that's the thinking mind. The thinking mind is not to be believed in or attached to, but recognized. And we use our thinking mind with wisdom rather than with just desire and ignorance and expressing personal views and biases and that we tend to use our thoughts and our speech to create endless conflicts within our own minds and then in the society we live in. So this sundot in Thai, they say mi sundot, that's highly regarded in Thai value system. As a way of saying making a very ultimate compliment to a Thai. As in, mi sundot liao, it means he's enlightened, really. and that is not a quality that is recognized in the West as being very important. In fact, from my background, it means that you're kind of stupid if you're content. And therefore like an animal chewing grass is content, contented cows in Switzerland, in the Alps and things like that, because they're not terribly, they don't think a lot and they don't create problems. But we do, we're cursed with a thinking mind, complicated patterns of thought and memory, and it is it's a very confusing, complicated life that we have to live as human beings. And then the Dhamma practice, meditation, is bringing it down to simplicity again. If you really understand what mindfulness, sati sampajanya, really is, develop it, it's ultimate simplicity. It's the ability we have in the present to let go of everything and just be totally present, open to the way it is. And there's nothing no grasping, no demand, no criticism being made. It's just the ability to embrace the totality of a moment in consciousness, that we begin to recognize the escape from suffering, the path through samadhi, right understanding, in which we can get out of the trap, out of the vicious circle, the vortex of the thinking, emotional, conditioned realm that we tend to be lost, overwhelmed by. So today, the Kudme Bao, she was one of the supporters that helped make the last my brief reign at Wat Nanachat. She was the one that came and we had this grass roof sala, and just a very primitive place that with bamboo tiangs. We sat on bamboo, and then the floor was dirt floor. We put mats on it. Yeah, I quite liked it actually. It was not particularly hungry for glamorous salas, but some of these more primitive things are quite pleasing to an eye like mine. It's kind of basic, and you can't really do that in Seattle, Washington. You can't, I would never think of making a sala like that. But anyway, it was like one of these freak days when Mayor Pao and a group of people from Bangkok, and there was this kind of well-known personality, Nai Akom, who was like a DJ or a disc jockey on the Air Force radio, Soon Nung, and he was very, very charming, very outgoing, kind of loved by the people in general, and Mayor Bao was very connected with him because her husband was an Air Force general, and so they'd go around the country looking for starving monks, poor monasteries, these kind of society ladies, and get in coaches and go off to Mae Hong Son or some remote place just to find some destitute monastery, and then they'd rush back to Bangkok, raise the money, and buy the things to take and offer as a papa, as a dana offering. And so Luang Por Chah told them about us. At that time we were very, very poor. And so, and the day they came, the coaches came up in the morning, up the road, and immediately when they got out of the coach, it started raining, and it was a freak rainstorm, because it's not supposed to rain that time of the year. And it rained very hard, and they all rushed into this grassroots sala, you see, and then they're all huddled in there looking at, and of course the thought comes in, oh, they need a sala. And they started raising funds right in front of me. And of course the villagers thought my wife was performing some magic trick. I swear I had nothing to do with it. But it was auspicious. And of course then Nai Akom, one time he even, this is when I was in England, he was even active in raising funds for Amravati, and so he one year he promised 1 million baht. So, and I just didn't really think about it much, and then I came the next year, and I'm sitting in the sala at Nana Chat, and Nai Akom comes in and drops a bag of baht, 1 million baht, right in front of me. I didn't count it, but I just assumed it was. But and Mayor Bao is one of these people who, only Thailand can produce, I think, where they just love to tamboon, make merit, and get such joy out of it. And so she and Nai Akom and her husband and the Thai Air Force was very much responsible for building the previous sala, which is now no longer existing. And so when I went to see Mayor Bao before going to Ratanawan a few weeks back, I invited her to come here for this ceremony. And she's not very well, as you can see. She used to be very robust, active, energetic woman, but she's had health problems and now confined to wheelchair. But she seemed determined then to come, and I thought, she couldn't possibly do that, but she was here this morning, and so it was a very joyful thing to have this continuity and appreciation from the Sangha for someone like that, who, an old woman who has spent so much of her life supporting the Sangha in the way that she knows how. So, and this is a good image for her. All these monks, many of the Ajahns from different branch monasteries, and then all of you coming here for this event, kind of a way of expressing our appreciation and gratitude for the generosity that we receive. And so with contentment, this is the purpose of this life. What an alms mendicant. Why did the Buddha establish a monastic order on alms mendicancy, on begging, on being totally dependent on somebody else, on lay community for basic requisites? How could he have done that? And of course, the amazing thing that it works. 2,554 years, and we're sitting here right now. Our lives depend on that alms, and so this kind of goes against the whole cultural attitude of the West. You've got to have security through money in the bank, and look out for yourself and make sure you've got loads of security, material and financial security. So in Dhamma, you're really going against the whole flow of the worldly tendencies. At this time, the society, economics, the political, economic conditions all over, in Asia, Europe, or wherever, is very much materialistic and about economic progress and abundance and getting more and more. And so then of course nobody wants to admit the fact that it's not going to be that way. The signs are there. The other side is happening, the decay, the degeneration. Now as alms mendicants, because of our life, we're no longer, dependent on an affluent society or a booming economy. So we can survive in the various economic bubbles and crashes and depressions that happen in our lives as we live here in Thailand or England or wherever. So that means that the more you kind of train yourself, it's not, from middle class kind of background, where your life is based on material comfort and a kind of taking for granted a certain level of material necessity, to living in this very simple way, where rice in the alms bowl, robes made from rags, and shelter for the night, and basic medicinal substances, 4 requisites. And then we always get better than that. So we have beautiful sala with a polished granite floor, and made a beautiful Buddha Rupa today. And we, this is to be appreciated and acknowledged, but our life is really, the nitty-gritty of our monastic life is just the alms food and the robe and the shelter and the medicine. So then we can also become aware of our own discontentment, the way we do grumble and complain, and where nature is to complain and grumble and criticize. So it's my first few years of monasticism, I made a strong determination to not grumble, because my cultural conditioning is grumbling. I spent 4 years in the military where, even before that, I wasn't so bad a grumbler, but 4 years in the American Navy. In the Navy, you just grumble about everything. And this kind of influenced me, and because it's supported by the society, being critical, finding fault with yourself or who you live with or the place you're in or the society you live in. And so I made a determination, an adhitthana, not to grumble. And I've tried to keep that throughout my monastic life. So, in Wat Pah Pong in the early days, where I couldn't understand, most of what's going on, and so where I found this inner grumbling, kind of whinging, grumbling unpleasantness inside me. And so but I determined not to develop that, or to believe it, or to do anything but recognize it, to, not to even suppress it, but to use it as a way of developing, cultivating mindfulness, and to let go of the very conditions that make one's life so unhappy, even in the midst of a lot of pleasure and beauty. And like today, when I think of a day like this, there's so much to be grateful for, so many good people coming together, so many good things happening all at once to us in one day, and yet I'm sure critical thoughts have gone through some of your minds now and then, and complaints and that, and so this is just the way of our humanity, is to, because we can always imagine being better, or somebody else, blaming somebody, or oneself. And so this mindfulness is our ability to tune into that, observe it, and not be caught into it, to determine, to recognize it, because suppressing it does not help. It just makes it worse. And so it's not like trying to pretend that you're content, or act like, that you don't feel grumpy or complaining, but it's using these tendencies that we actually develop the path. And whatever we have to work with, whatever characters we have, both on their positive or negative manifestations, they are the path for us. And so, we're the knower of these conditions rather than the conditions themselves. So, and just this encouragement towards, the beauty of the monastic form, this particular tradition, Theravada tradition, and then as we developed it from Luang Por Chah and our exemplary father figure. And so, because he was a very, powerful monk who had this kind of joy. When you lived with him, you could feel contentment and joy as a way his mind actually he manifested this through his through his body and speech. And yet he was fully human. He wasn't like goody-good or trying to be nice about everything, but he, you felt something at a deeper and deeper level. There was a real purity of mind that he'd recognized and cultivated. And so this is to remind you that this is what we're here for, what the aim of this life is all about. And then we, no matter, then we're all aiming at the same goal. So I just assume that all of you and myself are here for liberation from ignorance. And so I wanted to make that very clear, that's our common bond, that's where, there's no problem around that. And then there are so many misunderstandings just on personal reactions or emotional reactions to each other. We all have our particular hang-ups and difficult emotional habits, but remember the goal, and that's, like the Buddha Rupa, the one that they cast today. See that, and kind of develop that when it's in the sala, and they bring it, kind of determined to use that form as a reminder. So it's not just about, oh, isn't it nice or beautiful or things like that, but not to just see it, as some kind of art object or that, but to, develop that image of Bhutto or Buddha as a reminder. So that, and then when we see each other, the monastic form, the shaven head and the robe, we can see this as the Sangha, rather than this monk and that monk, junior monk, senior monk, and I like this one, don't like that one. And then it gets personal, and we have our own personal preferences and opinions about each other. But one thing, the point of having the same kind of robe and shaven head is because it does diminish, takes away the eccentric, unique, individual aspects that we tend to, be identified with and hold on to if we weren't ordained as Buddhist monks. And then Sangha then is seen from this no longer as so personally, in such a personal way, and our own emotional feelings about each other, we can see them for what they are. So that, this sense of Sangha, the monastic form, the bhikkhu, is like a symbol for that. What the supatipano, ujupatipano. So this way you have, if you use these forms properly, then they're reminders that you don't attach to them. You're not, they're not trying to grasp them or just dismiss them, but use them. Therefore, mindfulness and wisdom, developing the path. So I offer this. My voice is wearing out, so it's telling me to shut up.